Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May 2019 session of the Paulding County Planning Commission. This time, I'd ask you if you have any mobile devices, anything that might make a noise, please silence it or turn it off so it doesn't interrupt the proceedings of this meeting. And at this time, I will ask the Planning Commission if you've had the opportunity to review the minutes from the previous session of this body, whether or not you have any questions, comments, concerns, or edits. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion concerning the minutes from the April 23, 2019 session of the Planning
We
Commission.
accept the minutes as presented.
I have a move
Second.
by Ms. Turnbull to approve the minutes from the last session, and I'll give a second to Mr. Lowe. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Again, this is a recommending body. We will hear the cases that are brought before us on the agenda today. We will make a recommendation to the elected body that it pertains to, whose jurisdiction it is in, and all of these today are in Paulding County Board of Commissioners jurisdiction. Also, their meeting for consideration of whatever is recommended from this body will be forwarded to their next meeting, which is on Thursday at 7 o'clock, this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. If the applicant needs to be present for it to be considered, if you have a vested interest in it, you need to be present at that meeting as well. Each side will be given an opportunity to speak. The applicant and those that are for the application being considered is given 15 minutes. You may use all of that time in presenting the application, or you may conserve some of the time for others to speak or for rebuttal. Questions from the Board of Commissioners, questions from the Planning Commission do not count against your time, as well as questions from the Board of Commissioners or the Planning Commission to staff does not count against that time. Those wishing to speak in opposition to the application or simply may have questions, comments, or concerns are given 15 minutes to speak. You should be charitable with that time and save it for anybody who's lined up behind you, but if it's time for that, please come around, sign in, state your name. You will address your comments to the chair, which is me. First application.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And can I take 1 minute to thank and welcome Helene
Please.
Fitzgerald, Hiram representative on our planning commission, and appreciate you being here and helping us out. Thank you. First application, 2019-08 SUP application by Thomas Kyle Bagby for a special use permit on approximately 3.843 acres for parking and storage facility for recreational vehicles, boats, cars, and trucks. Property is located in land lots 387 and 406, District 2, Section 3. It's on the north side of Atlanta Highway and on the west side of Summerhill Connector. It's in Commission Post 1. Staff has recommended 2 stipulations upon approval, and we've had 1 call with concerns on this one, and the applicant is present.
If the applicant, please come around, sign in, state your name, address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission, the Paulding County Commissioners, and staff and public. My name is Ruth Huggins, and I'm representing Kyle Thomas Bagby, who's the applicant for this project. As Chris has already described, that he is interested in a special use permit, or has applied for that, to construct and operate a parking and storage facility for boats, campers, vehicles, and other recreational vehicles on this property. Several of the properties adjoining this property are zoned B2 or B1, and this application has been reviewed by all the departments as well as the staff, and they have recommended approval of this special use permit. I don't think I have any other comments at this time. Does anyone have any questions about our application?
Are there any questions to the applicant? Let me always start off the first one with, you're familiar with the 2 stipulations listed and you're in agreement with those?
Sorry. Yes, we do agree with the 2 stipulations that have been requested.
All right. Are there any questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant regarding this application?
This was one of the calls that we had was from one of the property owners to the north. He was a little concerned about the undisturbed buffer, which it's set at 40 foot.
Yes.
He asked if you guys would be agreeable to an additional 10 feet of undisturbed buffer.
Well, I'm looking at that northern line on the drawing, the schematic there, and it appears to me that there is probably 40 feet of trees on his property as it adjoins the line. And I guess, the property is already zoned B2 and has been zoned that for quite some time. And, most anything could be built there now with a 40-foot buffer. And I guess we sort of feel like that is adequate. Is there a particular reason that 10 feet would make a difference?
I think he's probably just concerned because when Cottage Cove came in, you can see that buffer there.
Well, see, this is
Non-existent.
not Cottage Cove.
I understand.
So, we would rather not do that. We do have, we only have a little over 3 acres and probably 2.5 to develop. It will also, on that northern line, it will be graded down, in accordance with the topo, as needed, but particularly as it goes towards Summerhill Road, it's graded down, and also going towards Cottage Cove. So he's going to be at a higher elevation for the most part. But that's just, we're just saying, I don't see where that will really gain anything, especially with the trees that are in place there.
And you are leaving the natural buffer intact?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it will either be natural or it will be a landscape buffer.
Determined by plan review?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It will have to be
I got that
graded,
now.
so it will have to be a buffer that's approved by y'all, landscape.
Is there any other questions to the applicant from Planning Commission?
About the water runoff.
Turn your-
The water runoff, is there going to be a problem with that?
No, sir, Mr. Henson, that will be piped and, properly handled.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And there will be a retention pond down at Atlanta Road and Summerhill at the corner there, and, or detention, rather.
That will also have to be permitted through plan review process as well. Mr. Aston?
I noticed it includes cars and trucks. What size trucks would it be? Is that just like a pickup truck, or is it?
That's right. We're not looking to store any kind of 18-wheelers or anything like that. It's just basically cars, vehicles,
What about the big box vans that 18-wheelers pull? You won't be storing any of those as well?
I don't believe so. No. Mm-mm. No. It's mainly recreational vehicles.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? On behalf of? In favor of? Hearing none, is there anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
I'm Ronald Cole. I live on the north side of that. And if you turn around and see, you'll see that's all shaded. The wood
Would
line,
you please state your name first?
Ronald Cole.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. Please continue.
I live on the north side, and as you can see in the picture, what she's calling trees, that's all shaded from the trees on their property. My grandfather owned all that property in the 40s. Earl Duncan bought it, Jimmy Campbell bought it, and then he passed away. But anyhow, you can't see my field there, the property line is actually a cut pasture all the way to the property line, and what you see is the overhang. You can't see the culverts coming out of the ground, but everything from Dempsey Path all the way up to Turner Hollow is culverted out into my pasture, and the water runs down to that. 20 years ago, I tried to build a house there. They wouldn't let me because it was a water land. Everything there that she's talking about graded down, it's already below the house where I live. That's why I asked for an extra buffer. It funnels from one side, from my grandfather's old driveway, which is the one that goes up beside the meat market there. You see the old driveway there? My grandfather's house was there. Jimmy Campbell bought it because he knew they was going to put that road in. He passed away. But we've been there since the 40s. I'm not sure if you can move that picture down and see the other part of my pasture, but there's actually culverts that come out. You can't see the loop at the top there is my driveway, and if you see that barn, there's a culvert right behind Cottage Cove and one on the other side of the chicken house that was built there. And all that water that comes from the top of that mountain drains down into that land. They wouldn't let me put a house there. But there's no wooded, I might have 15 trees in my whole pasture, as you can see, for cows and goats to get under. But there's nowhere else for the water to go. A small retention pond ain't gonna do it. You're talking 60 acres of runoff that goes there. And as far as the buffer, I would like to see a natural buffer be left if it does go through, because of the fact that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, all you hear is motorcycles and loud music from the bars across the street. Everything that lives up there is 80 years old plus, except for myself and my wife. We've all been there. I was born and raised there, and my grandfather built all the houses. He had a 5-story right where that road's sitting, but all the developmental houses was built in 40s and 50s by Ivy Lee Cole. I've got what's left there. But there's no buffer from the property line over at all. All that you see is a shade. And my concern is, they made us fill a pond in because they said it would not hold the whole water. The county made us fill the pond in because it was eroding. I'm spending anywhere, I spoke with Mr. Henson earlier, I'm spending anywhere from $300 to $2,500 every 6 months dealing with erosion on Cottage Cove. They were supposed to lift the buffer. There's no buffer there. They put a 6-foot privacy fence up, and every time something happens, they try to sue me. And it's costing me thousands and thousands and thousands between me and my Aunt Virginia Dempsey, who lived beside us. That pasture right there, I've got $100,000 in it in the last 5 years, just replacing dirt, putting gravel, rock, and everything else. And everything that's going there is washing down. I've actually took logs and put against the fence down, the fence line in the bottom, in the middle of that north line right there, to slow the erosion down.
Do you have any more points you want to make?
No?
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay. I'm new at this, my first time, I'm sorry.
Well, you did well. That's fine. Just for the sake of having this conversation, I'll let you know, what they're asking for is whether or not the use they're proposing is appropriate for this location. Whether this body forwards it to the Board of Commissioners with a recommendation to approve the rezoning, or the SUP, excuse me,
Right.
they will still have to go through plan review, which is where many of these people that you see up front here, the professional staff of Paulding County, will
Right.
take a look at the issues such as you're talking about: erosion, sedimentation control, pollution control, transportation, where they'll be placing the driveway, any number of things, as well as the buffer requirements, such as the treed buffer versus a planted buffer. And all that is usually determined in the plan review session. So this is just whether or not this is an appropriate use in the location. Whether or not it can physically be done once this is determined is going to be up to the council and their permitting office.
Right.
So your concerns are noted, and I'm going to ask at this point, if the Planning Commission has any questions for you before you sit down, so that we can fully vet the concern,
Well, I
as well as
also
the Board of
figure that
Commissioners.
there may be more here Is there any way that you can see a picture that I have?
If you want to bring it up in front of us and show us if it's on your phone,
Okay, let me pull it up right here because I wasn't aware of these signs until 2 days ago, Friday. I don't know how long they've been there, but the zoning signs that they put up are not visible from the road. They've cut treetops off, put them in behind it, and then put them in behind bushes on Business 6.
do you mind? That's, I'm gonna pass your phone that way, okay? And you can flip through there if you want to look at the other two. Sorry, just be thorough. Start there.
Yeah, I've seen
Flip to your left.
boards, Doug showed me, but go ahead.
There you are. From which side? Well, again, and we'll say, go ahead and take your place back over at the lectern. All right. We looked at some pictures that Mr. Cole has shown us. There's a question that he has regarding the appropriate posting of the properties, whether or not they were done in the correct manner. So we'll come back to that shortly. Again, drainage, those are items that are going to have to be touched upon at the planning commission, plan review session for Paulding County, where their civil engineers will get involved and tell them the appropriate way to handle the water and the water runoff generated from the property. That's, if somebody wants to ask a question or make a comment to that effect, you can, but it's the civil engineers of the county that will determine what their requirements are to prevent it from being an issue to neighboring properties.
Okay.
There any questions to Mr. Cole from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners? Mr. Cole, thank you for your time. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding it? All right. Ms. Huggins, do you want to come back and address the posting, comments from Mr. Cole? That was the posting of the legal
Yes.
notices?
Yes. All of the posting was done in accordance with the requirements and in the time frame required. Quite sure that Mr. Cole received a letter notification about this. He got a letter in the mail about the zoning.
Please address me.
Yeah.
Please address
Yeah,
yours.
he, I'm sure he got the letter, and I believe he called Mr. Bagby's father to discuss this. But also, the signs were, he tried to put them off the right-of-way, but they were properly posted, you know, at the
So
time.
they're set back off of the right-of-way, at the edge of right-of-way,
Yes.
this would, of Summer Hill Road and the appropriate,
Yes.
other appropriate
Yes.
locations.
And I'm sure that and they even cut some vegetation to put them in there, and I'm sure that vegetation has grown like gangbusters with all the heat we've had, but all the posting was properly done.
Okay.
Also, of course, we want to be a good neighbor, and, certainly are not wanting to have any kind of adversarial situation at all. I guess I just fail to see what the 10 feet, we don't see what the 10 feet would accomplish, really.
What about leaving it as natural buffer from the property line into the original buffer requirement?
I think
40
that
feet?
is going to come down to the actual construction plans and a part of the further review that the
Plan
county will
review.
have, planning review.
Yeah, I want to be cautious in what we say here so that we
Yes.
don't inhibit what plan review will tell the applicant to
Yes,
do
I
with the
mean,
property.
if we can, I mean, I don't think there's any problem with that, but I can't stand here and say that that's gonna happen, because I don't know yet. And especially with this culvert situation, I would think this water runoff situation would be better after this development is done.
All right. Are there any other questions to Ms. Huggins? Board of Commissioners? Thank you very much, Ms. Huggins.
Thank you.
And Chris, could you address the posting of the signs, please?
Yes. Of course, under the Georgia Planning Act and actually Zoning Procedures Act and Paulding County Planning zoning ordinance, we're required to have signs posted 15 days prior to this hearing date. Those signs were provided. We also received photographs from the applicant on the assigned date that it had to be up, that were, in our opinion, met the standards of the ordinance. We also have visually, we're able to see the signs. I did want to make one comment about a buffer.
Before we move on from that, but
Yes.
in your professional opinion, the posting that was on the property meets the criteria required by the county and state law for zoning
I do,
purposes?
I do.
Okay.
And the other comment about the buffer, it's in this area here, that's required.
Kind of lost you for a second, would you?
Just the highlighted area I was pointing to, that is the area that a 40-foot buffer is required of this property. The other tracks to the west and the south, and then on the northeast side up there are all different zoning categories besides residential.
And all of that falls toward the development? As far as, is that a descending elevation into?
Yes. Everything comes down.
Okay. Just making sure I could see that it is. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't misreading it. Who would handle the stormwater question? George? Would that be you?
Yes, Jody, but again, it's like you discussed earlier, this would be addressed during plan review. Is he looking at
But
ways?
that is subject matter that plan review would cover and ensure that.
Exactly,
the
looking at
appropriate
ways to,
measures were taken.
handle the stormwater to accommodate it, looking at different methods, exactly, like to reduce impervious.
All right.
Exactly.
Are there any questions from the planning commission to the staff? Board of Commissioners? Hearing none at this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2019-08-SUP.
I move that we accept the SUP with the two special stipulations.
I have a motion to approve from Ms. Turnbull with the two listed stipulations. Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a second from Mr. Aston. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes 4-1 and 1. Again, this will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting at 7 o'clock on Thursday evening. The applicant has to be there for it to be considered. If you have a vested interest, please be there for your part. Mr. Robinson?
Mr. Chairman, the next application, 2019-05Z, application by Aubrey Tyson. That one has a little more administratively discussion on it that we need to take place. And so that application has been forwarded to the June meeting, and I will be meeting with the Tysons on some questions and resolutions on some other things.
All right.
Application 2019-06Z, application by Delbert Shines to rezone approximately 3.49 acres from R2 Suburban Residential District to B1 General Business District for commercial use. Property is located in land lots 330 and 391, District 2, Section 3, south side of Macklin Road, east of Ragsdale Road. It's also in Commission Post 1. Staff has recommended approval with 7 printed stipulations. We've had a call with some concerns, and also we had comments from the Paulding County School System, since adjacent there is PB Ridge. And the applicant is present.
The applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Hello, my name is Dr. Dale Sines. I run Sines and Spines Chiropractic, and I would just like to be able to have my office there at 2456 Macklin Road to continue to provide care to all my patients in the area.
All right.
That's just mainly what we're doing.
And are you familiar with the 7 listed stipulations, and you are agreeable to those?
I am. Nothing's changing on the property at all whatsoever. Everything is already in place and taken care of.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions? Thank you, sir. You can reserve the remainder of your time. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2019-06-Z.
Motion to approve with all 7 stipulations.
A motion to
Second.
approve with 7 stipulations by Mr. Lowe. I have a second by Mr. Henson. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Getting some feedback here. That's not me. I don't sound like that. They don't cause enough traffic over there. Mr. Robinson?
Okay. Last application, 2019-07Z, application by Piedmont Residential LLC to rezone approximately 3 planned residential development to R55 Active Adult Residential District for development of a senior living community. Property is located in land lots 533, 534, and 535, District 3, Section 3, south side of Seven Hills Connector. It's north of Oak Glen Drive, and this is also just east of Cedar Crest Road. Staff has recommended approval with 13 stipulations, and we have some amendments to those.
That's what I was remembering.
And I wanted to enter that into the record. Out of the
Are you going to make me write this down? Are you going to make me write all this down?
It's already written down,
Okay.
and we have it. And I thought I would read it. And I'll provide this copy to you.
Thank you.
Out of the stipulations, owner-developer on stipulation number 4, It will now read, owner-developer agrees to enter into a development agreement with the Paulding County Water System for the placement and sharing of cost of a 16-inch water main within the right-of-way of Seven Hills Connector along the property frontage. And we will remove stipulation number 5. And then stipulation number 12 will be replaced with owner-developer agrees to provide sanitary sewer easement to the property to the west, subject to terms to be negotiated between the property owners prior to approval of final plat for the development.
All right. A sanitary agreement. Okay. Sanitary sewer easement, property, okay. Glad you gave this to me. All right. Is the applicant present?
We did have one call with questions.
Yes.
And also, there were some concerns with the school system as they own the property to the east and to the north of the site.
Okay. All right.
My name is J.D. Espana. I am the managing partner at Piedmont Residential LLC. And as Chris has said, we are applying to rezone 33 acres from PRD to 55 senior living in accordance to recommendations by staff that we've been talking to with on what we should do with this property.
Thank you. And you are familiar with the 13 stipulations and those amended, just recited?
Yes, sir.
And you're in agreement with those?
Yes, sir.
Is there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? As you began moving before I called for opposition, are you speaking on behalf of it or in opposition to it?
On behalf of it, just
Thank
want
you
to make
very
a note
much.
of record.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time today. My name is Carl Lugens. I represent Southland Engineering and the client to a property immediately to the west of this is about 13 acres. And I'm glad to hear some of the stipulations that were added to this property because it will certainly help the 13 acres that's zoned commercial develop. My client does have an active development plan that he's working on, and we have met with the city, and we've contacted the adjacent or the applicant's engineer about the sewer easements. So we're here just to say this is a good development. We believe in it, but we would like to make a record about the sewer easements that would be provided. And as I mentioned, our development is well underway. We would hope that we could make it a resolution to determine those easements prior to maybe their final plat, but maybe earlier in the process, during the planning process.
Well, that would be something that would be discussed during the plan review phase as well as with the applicant and the county staff.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, concerns? If you would please come to the lectern, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
My My name's Ed Ledford, and I live in the Oak Glen subdivision. One of my questions is, will there be a buffer on that common property line between Oak Glen and this development?
I'll take your questions and we'll answer it once I go to staff.
And the other is just, it may be premature to ask this, but I know there's two large detention basins in our subdivision that empty into this property. And I don't know enough about it to know who owns the detention basins and then what will happen in this development.
Well, on that point, again, if this moves forward, if the planning commission recommends approval and the board of commissioners subsequently approve the rezoning, then at whatever time they schedule, they will submit their plans, their civil plans, to Paulding County for them to consider it during plan review. At that time, each one of our administrative professionals here, civil engineers, planners, will take a look at it, and the requirements for stormwater will have to be met as regulated by both the state of Georgia and the county. So at that time, they will address all of that as to how the stormwater is both received and discharged. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better, but that is the process.
Well, I just know there's a lot of water going back into that property, and not all of it goes into the detention basin. So I understand that without a grading plan, it's hard to
Yes, sir.
imagine the question, but
I imagine they would
is there a way
also-
I could find out when those are being reviewed? And
Well, are those plan review sessions open to the public? I've not had that request come to me before.
Typically, that'd be simply a staff operation that's not under the Open Meetings Act, but any of the documentation is certainly available pursuant to the open records.
So basically, whatever comes about as of the plan review meetings would be accessible to the public, including yourself, for review.
all right.
But they will have to submit a hydrology study of the property to make sure that they're taking into account what you're concerned with. As far as the buffer, I will ask staff on that one as well, and you'll hear the answer if
All right.
if that's the extent of your comments.
That it is.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Robinson. Buffer requirements between developments.
Buffer requirements. Over on the east side is a 10-foot against the commercial property. On the south side, the R2 zoning is a 15-foot.
So it
And
would
then
be,
back over on the PRD side, over here,
Mhm.
or where the school system is a 10-foot.
So that rear buffer is a 15-foot buffer.
Yes.
Rear coming from Seven Hills Connector
Yes.
south. You pointed along the line, that
Yes.
bottom line, correct?
Yes, I
Okay.
did. Down here.
So, and that's in the
That
county's
is in
development
the-
standards?
That is in the zoning ordinance.
Okay. There any questions to staff from the planning commission?
I have one. Chris, the PRD zoning, the existing zoning compared to the R55 as far as density of lots, is that about the same? How does that compare?
In this case here, the PRD, which of course is not a zoning category anymore except for what's grandfathered out there, this particular parcel fails to meet that minimal standard at this time, so it technically couldn't be developed as a PRD anymore. In a PRD, you could do 3 units per acre. In a R55, it's 5 units per acre, which in this case, I think they were averaged close to that. Actually, they're going to be averaging about 3.06, which would be very similar to if a PRD was still
What was
there.
it? Any other questions to the staff? Board of Commissioners, any questions? Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application? Hearing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2019-07-Z.
Motion to approve with amended stipulations.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Lowe with the 13 stipulations and the amended versions as recited by Mr. Robinson.
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Turnbull. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Lowe. I have a second by Mr. Aston. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. Thank you very much for your time.